Buenos días.
Buenos días.
¿Qué tal? ¿Bien? ¿Bien? Sí, más o menos. Ok. Yo soy el profesor Antón García Fernández y yo soy profesor de español aquí en UT Martin y hoy voy a hablar con ustedes un poco sobre España. Okay, so I just want to welcome you to the university. It's my pleasure really to be here, getting a chance to talk to you a little bit about Spain. It's a beautiful day out there. I hope you enjoyed your campus tour. I've never gone on one of those, so, but it's the perfect day for that. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we do here at the university, why we think that learning foreign language is important, what you can do with a foreign language and how it can enhance really not just your life, your personal life, but also in many ways your professional life. It's great to actually have here Michael Allen, who was not Allen back when she was sitting on that side of the fence, but she was one of my students, one of the best students that I've had here at UT Martin, and I'm happy to see that now you have her as a teacher at Henry County. Yeah, and some of you may have seen me before because I spent some time in my free time refereeing high school soccer for TSSAA, and so I've been to your high school many times. I've been to also to the park, McNeil Park, to referee games there. So you might know me from the soccer pitch, from the soccer pitch. And in fact, this afternoon I have a double header, not in Martin and not in Paris, but that's something that I do in my free time. Now, yo soy, como digo, el profesor Antón García Fernández. Okay, now, you've heard me talk in English a little bit, so you probably know, you probably are aware that I'm not originally from Tennessee, right? Do I sound like I'm from Tennessee? Yeah. No, not at all, not at all. My daughter does. She's 10 and a half, and she does sound like she's from Tennessee because she was born in Tennessee, but I was not. Where do you think I'm from originally? Right. España, muy bien, correcto. So, I'll show you very quickly here. This map of Spain, okay, el mapa de España. I'm sure you recognize a few of the cities. Madrid, right there in the center, that's the capital city of Spain. You have Barcelona right there. You might have heard of Barcelona and Madrid through many things, but maybe also soccer, right? We have Sevilla somewhere down here. We have Bilbao in the north. We have Valencia right here. Well, I wasn't born in any of those cities, but I was born right here in the northwest, in the city of Vigo. Okay, have you ever heard of Vigo before? Anybody? Well, Mrs. Allen obviously does because she had me as a professor, so she's heard of Vigo before. Anybody that's heard of Vigo? Yes. Yeah. Why? Is there any reason why? Do you remember why?
You got a good beach or something like that?
Oh, yeah, it's right on the coast. Okay, so as you can see, this is the Atlantic Ocean. So Spain has the Atlantic coast and then the Mediterranean coast. Now this one is very well known. This is very popular. Lots of tourism here because of the fact that the water's warmer here and the beaches are beautiful, but they're also beautiful in the north. The problem is the weather sometimes doesn't go along with that. I would say the beaches in the north of Spain are sandier, and in some ways they are more beautiful, but the problem is you can never count on the weather, and of course the Atlantic Ocean water is usually colder. So that's where I was born, in the city of Vigo. It's a big seaport town. It has a big harbor, lots of ocean liners that stop there. There's lots of fishing being done. It's one of the most important harbors, one of the most important ports in Europe. And I moved to the United States many years ago. In fact, I have lived in Tennessee longer than in Europe. So I've been here for many years. I earned my PhD in Spanish from Vanderbilt University in Nashville. That's where I met my wife, and then we got married, and then at some point somewhere along the way I became a U.S. citizen, and I'm here ever since. So I've been in Tennessee for well over a couple of decades already. So Yeah, and I've been teaching at UT Martin since 2011, so this is my, I guess, 13th year, 12th, 13th year of teaching at UT Martin. And, you know, very happy to be here. I live in Jackson. I don't live in Martin. I used to live in Martin, but now I live in Jackson. And I, you know, drive up here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and today, Thursday, for this presentation as well. And, you know, I just wanted to ask you, you know, at your school, you have different languages. You've chosen to study Spanish. So what do you think of when you hear the word Spain? What comes, you know, through your minds? What's the first thing you think of when you think of Spain? Give me some things.
Soccer.
Soccer, yeah, absolutely. Spain has won the World Cup once, and some of the best soccer teams and players in Europe come from Spain. So yeah, sports are important in Spain, but soccer is not the only important sport in Spain. There's also basketball that's popular in Spain, tennis, cycling, track and field. You know, sports are very important in Spain. Now, American sports are beginning to become a little bit more important. You know, people follow the NFL a little bit, but mostly they do follow the NBA because basketball is a big sport there, and there are several basketball players that have played in the NBA that come from Spain. But, you know, baseball, ice hockey, not so much. But yeah, soccer is one thing. What else? Bullfighting, yeah, that's right. Well, bullfighting is really a long-standing tradition in Spain. And it has become almost iconic. It has become almost like a synonym of Spain. You think of Spain and you think of bullfighting, for example, right? Yes, absolutely. The interesting thing is that bullfighting is not popular all over Spain. It's only popular in some parts of Spain. So, you know, if you think, for example, of like the center of Spain to the south, it is popular over there. It's also popular in some parts here in the north, but where I was born, in the northwest of Spain, Galicia, okay, right there, bullfighting is not popular. You will not find a Plaza de Toros or bullfighting ring in the northwest of Spain. It's just not a tradition there. And in some parts of Spain, over here, specifically in the city of Barcelona, bullfighting has even been banned. Okay, so it's not that it's not popular there. It's not even allowed by the law. So yes, bullfighting is iconic of Spain, but not necessarily popular all over the country. Muy bien. ¿Qué más? What other things do you think of when you think of Spain? Nothing else? Just bullfighting and soccer? There's got to be more. See? What is that? Ah, los conquistadores. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, when they say that America was discovered by the Europeans, really, because America had always been there. They just didn't know it was there. But there were people living there, and there were things going on in the Americas before the Europeans got there. But in the late 15th century, when it was discovered by the Europeans, you know, a lot of them came from Spain, and in fact, the trip of Christopher Columbus was funded by the Spanish royalty, and so, yeah, lots of people settled in the Americas that came originally from Spain, and not just in South America or Central America, which are the parts of the Americas where Spanish is mostly spoken today, but also in North America, okay? Part of what is now the United States originally belonged to what was then the Spanish Empire. So if you think, for example, about the names of some of the states in the United States, Florida, for example, Florida, that means flowery or full of flowers. Think, for example, of Montana. Montana is the word in Spanish for mountain, montaña, right? And there's many, many more examples of that. Nevada, where Las Vegas is located, that in Spanish means snowy or full of snow, okay, from the word nieve. So actually, there are a lot of places, and if you go, for example, to California, you'll see a lot of the cities there have Spanish names. San Francisco, Los Angeles, right, the Angels, San Diego, etc., right? But even in Tennessee, think about it this way. even in the state of Tennessee around us, we have a lot of place names that actually come from Spanish. Think, for example, of the city of Medina in Tennessee, not too far from Jackson. That's Medina, it comes from Spanish. Cordova, closer to Memphis, that comes from a southern Spanish city of Córdoba, which is somewhere around here in the south of Spain. Okay, so right here, see, Córdoba, it's right there. And there's many, many more examples of that. Bolivar, for example, that's a Spanish last name, Bolivar. And even if you go to the Boot Heel of Missouri, you will find cities like New Madrid. New Madrid, that is just based on the name of the capital city of Spain. It's just that in Missouri they pronounce it Madrid, but in Spanish it's Madrid or Madrid. Okay, so yeah, absolutely, the conquistadores are part of the history, not just of the Americas, but also in a way, part of the history of the United States. Yeah, absolutely. And if you go to New Orleans, for example, you will see the influence there of the Spaniards, then the French, and of course, finally, through the Louisiana Purchase, it became a part of the United States. But still, the architecture, the looks of things, even the names of some of the streets in New Orleans, they come from Spanish. So and French as well. Okay? Well, yeah, 3 important things. What else? Anything else that you can think of? No? Nothing else? Have you heard, for example, of flamenco dancing? Flamenco music where they play guitars and they clap their hands and they dance and they have, flowery dresses and very elaborate dresses. That, just like bullfighting, is another example of how in Spain, we have certain traditions that have become iconic, that everyone thinks of when they think of Spain. But in reality, it's not something that's popular all over the country. So flamenco dancing, flamenco music is popular in different parts of Spain, absolutely. But if you go to the Northwest, for example, where I come from, that tradition is not there in the Northwest. En Galicia no hay música o baile de flamenco, okay? What they do have in the Northwest of Spain, though, is a certain Celtic influence. Celtic, yeah, the Celts. When you think of the Celts, you think of maybe Ireland, maybe Scotland, Wales, right? Maybe the north of France, but also in the northwest of Spain, right up there is a certain Celtic influence. So the kind of music that's popular, that's traditional there, is not necessarily guitars and hand clapping and those kinds of singing, but actually bagpipes and bass drums and fiddles and the kind of music that one would associate with Ireland, Irish music. Now that St. Patrick's Day just went by, right? You hear a lot of Irish music. Well, that kind of music is also popular, traditional in the northwest of Spain, supposedly because the Celts settled and lived in that area for several centuries. So it's not strange to see in festivals in the northwest people wearing kilts, or people playing the bagpipes or playing the fiddle. And there's a little bit of connection there with American country music as well, because a lot of the country music came from that area of Europe originally. So as you can see, you can think of Spain in many different ways, but the interesting thing is that the different traditions that we have in Spain are not necessarily widespread all over the country. So Spain is a very small country. Now you look at the map there, right? And right here you have Europe, like France and Portugal, the British Isles, Scandinavia, Russia right there. Look how small really Spain is. Spain is right here, right? And that's Portugal right there, that's France up there. And it's a very small country. It's actually half of the size of the state of Texas. Okay? So think of the state of Texas, which is big, right? But Spain is half the size of the state of Texas. So you can fit 2 Spains in one Lone Star state, right? So It's a small country, but what's interesting is that there's a huge variety of traditions and cultures that actually met there in Spain, and that is still true today. In some parts, you'll find specific kinds of food. In some parts, you'll find specific kinds of music or dancing or traditions and festivities and things like that that you will not find in other parts of Spain, being such a small country. Okay, a country where 49 million people live. It's not. I mean, it is populated, but when you think, for example, of the 300 or 350 million people who live in the United States, Spain is a small country, but it's very diverse. Now, one thing that's interesting is that in Spain, of course, the national language in Spain is the language of Spanish, which is the one that you are learning in school. Now, within Spain, everywhere in Spain, right there, and of course Spain also includes a couple of sets of islands, the Balearic Islands, Las Islas Baleares right there, and the Canary Islands, Las Islas Canarias, which are not right there, but they're more like down here off the African coast. Okay, they're closer to Africa than they are to Spain, but they belong to Spain. In any case, in all that territory, Spanish is spoken. However, okay, that's not the only language that is spoken in Spain. Okay, there are other languages that are regional and that are spoken in Spain. For example, right here in this area, we have the area of Catalunya. Okay, Catalunya. That's where Barcelona is located. That's one of the biggest cities in Spain, and also one of the most beautiful, I think. Well, in this area, not only Spanish is spoken, but there's another language called Catalan, okay, or Catalan, that is spoken there as well. So people who are born in that area speak both Spanish, and then they also speak Catalan. And Catalan is not a variety of Spanish, it's a different language. Now, it is in some ways similar to Spanish, and because France is close, it's also in a way similar to French, but it's a different language, it's not Spanish. In this area here, where I was born in Galicia, okay, right here, there's also another language that is spoken, and that language is called Gallego, okay, Gallego, or in English, Galician. Now again, that's not just a variety of Spanish, it's just a different language. It's similar again. It's more similar to, Portuguese and Spanish than to French, but it's a different language. If you know some Spanish, you can understand some of the Gallego, but not necessarily speak it, not necessarily understand 100%, because it's a different language, okay? It still comes from Latin, like Spanish, but it's a different language. And then we also have a third one right here in the north, in what we call El País Vasco, or Euskadi, or in English, the Basque Country, which is this part of Spain right here, which also goes into some parts of southern France. And over there, they have another language, which is called Basco, or Euskera, or in English, Basque. Now, that language, Basco, has nothing to do with Spanish. It's not similar at all to Spanish. So if you hear Basco, if you hear the Basque language, you will not be able to understand almost any word, even if you're fluent in Spanish, because it's a language that has nothing to do, it's not similar in the least to Spanish. Now people learn it in school, all of these languages that you see there, Catalan, Gallego, Basco, those languages are official, they're co-official in Spain. So people actually learn them in school. There are radio stations in those languages, publications in those languages, music in those languages, TV stations, podcasts, I assume, in those languages. And so, somebody like me, who was born in Vigo, right? From the time when I was a little kid, I learned to speak both Spanish and Gallego. And the fact that I used to travel a lot in the north of Portugal right there with my family, and the fact that Gallego is kind of similar to Portuguese, it kind of helped me also learn Portuguese. So from the time that I was a little kid, I could speak 2 or 3 languages, and that really has helped me quite a bit. I don't know if you had heard of the different languages of Spain before, but I'm going to give you an example of how different or similar they can be. For example, how do we say in Spanish, ¿cómo se dice en español good morning? Muy bien, okay? Entonces tenemos buenos días, right? Muy bien. Buenos días. If we were to say the same thing en gallego, in Galician, then we would say, atención, Bos días. Let's try it. Bos días.
Buenos días.
Muy bien. So as you can see, it's not that different, right? You can more or less understand it. It's kind of similar, right? If we moved all the way from Spain, from the west of Spain to the east of Spain, and we got to the Catalunya area, and we spoke Catalan, then the same thing would be bon dia. Okay, so let's try it. Bon dia.
Bon dia.
Okay, so there you go. Not different. See, no accent when you write it. It's bon instead of buenos. It's kind of similar though. Look how in Gallego the exclamation point, and in Catalan the exclamation point is only at the end, whereas in Spanish we have it at the beginning and at the end of the sentence. Okay, muy bien. But finally, so that you can see how different it is, if you go to the north to the Basque Country, the expression for buenos días in Basque would be, atención, egunon. Okay, so let's try it. Egunon.
Egunon.
As you can see, nothing to do. Okay? Nothing to do. Buenos días, bos días, bon dia, egunon. Very different. So if you hear that and you have not studied the language, you wouldn't be able to understand it. As you can see, books are published in those languages as well. These are comic books. This is a character called Tintin. You might have heard of him because Steven Spielberg made a movie about Tintin. And you know, this is a book that originally in Spanish would be called Las Joyas de la Castafiore. La Castafiore is that woman, that character in red, who's an opera singer that you see in the middle of the cover, right? So, Las Joyas de la Castafiore. That would be the Spanish for it. Now in Catalan, Les Joyas de la Castafiore. So it's not really that different. You know, you see it, it's more or less similar, right, to the Spanish. In Galician and Gallego, we would say, look at that, as joyas, because the X is pronounced sh, just like the SH in English, in she, he or she, right? So, as joyas da Castafiore, right? It's not really that different, more or less. It sounds similar, joyas, joyas, more or less, right? But when we move into the Basque, as you can see, it has nothing to do. Castafiore Biciac. Biciac means, apparently, joyas, or jewels, okay? So as you can see, the language of the Basque country is very different from Spanish, and you would not necessarily be able to follow it along. My wife, who took French in high school and also in college, but now after being with me for so many years, she has traveled to Spain with me many times. So now she can speak Spanish really well. She's very fluent in Spanish, and she can, because she's fluent in Spanish, follow along when somebody speaks in Gallego, in Galician. She will not understand everything, but she'll understand quite a bit. If they were speaking in Basque, she or I would not be able to understand absolutely anything. Okay? So another thing that's interesting about Spain that not everybody knows is that Spanish is the national language of Spain, but it's not the only one that is official and that people speak there. So that's another thing that I wanted to present today. You can see also that, Spain is very close to Africa. Okay, it's possibly one of the closest European countries to Africa, and therefore, there is a lot of cultural diversity in Spain because a lot of people that immigrate from Africa to Europe, they actually enter Europe in many different ways, but in some cases from or through Spain. So, in the last few minutes that I have here, I want to know, before making some final remarks, if there are any questions that you would have for me. Anything about myself, about my experience in the U.S., about Spain, about the university, anything that I could try and answer for you. I'd be happy to do so right now. So, one question back there.
What made you move to America?
That's a good question. Originally, I came to America as an exchange student. I was a junior in college at the University of Vigo, my home university right there. I was living with my parents through my entire high school, yes, but also college years. But I spent an entire year at the University of South Dakota in Vermilion, South Dakota, a very small town, smaller than Martin, really, in South Dakota, in the Midwest. And I was there as an exchange student, and there were some students from South Dakota that were sent to the University of Vigo, right? So I spent an entire year there, and I enjoyed the atmosphere of American universities. I enjoyed how well I was treated by Americans when I was there during that entire year, and then I decided that my major was English. That my intention was to be a professor of English somewhere in Europe. But that visit to South Dakota changed my idea of what I wanted to do, and I decided to go back to Spain, finish my degree, and then come to the U.S. for graduate school. But graduate school, not in English, because who's going to hire me, somebody from Spain, to teach English when there are Americans that can do that a million times better than me? So I decided to do a PhD in Spanish. And I got the PhD in Spanish from Vanderbilt, and all these years later, I'm still here. So that experience of coming to the United States as a junior in college, really changed my life, because I did not know until I came that I was going to change my major, or that I was going to, live for the rest of my life in the United States. So sometimes, you do certain things. You travel abroad. And things change because of that. I didn't know, of course, back then that I was going to meet, who now is my wife, and that I would settle down here in the U.S. But those things can happen. So that's the reason why I did come to America. Más preguntas. ¿Qué más preguntas tiene? Come on, don't be shy. Sí.
Wasn't there a word in Barcelona over Catalan becoming an official language?
Were there any problems, you mean, or? No, I mean, obviously there would be people who were, against it, and of course, there are certain feelings of certain people who are more nationalistic and who would like Catalonia to be its own country and separate from Spain. Now, I don't see that happening in the near future, but in Catalonia, both languages are spoken pretty much equally. Anyone who lives there can speak both languages. Of course, if you're a student of Spanish, like all of you are, and you travel to Barcelona and you spend some time there, if you speak to somebody in Spanish, they're going to respond in Spanish because they understand that you don't know Catalan. But I tell you, if you were to move there and marry somebody from there and live there the rest of your life, just like it's my case in Tennessee, I'm sure you would learn both languages. You would improve your Spanish, and I'm sure you would also be able to learn some Catalan, because it's everywhere. Same thing with Gallego, and to a certain extent, same thing with Basque, even though Basque is a lot more difficult than Spanish. Yeah, that's a good question. Más preguntas. Come on, what else? What else would you like to know? Maybe about the university? Anything else? Sí.
How was your college life in Spain?
How was my college life in Spain? Muy bien. College is very different in Spain than in the United States. I feel like in the United States there are a lot more activities that the university creates and organizes for you. Sometimes, of course, sports are a lot bigger in American universities than they are in Spanish universities. There are no sports teams at Spanish universities. Any sport that's popular in Spain is usually organized through clubs, not through schools or universities. And now the difference is there are no fraternities, there are no sororities, so those kinds of things don't really exist. The social life does not have to do with something that usually the university organizes for you. You kind of create it yourself by meeting different people. Another difference that's important is that in Spanish universities, there are not majors and minors. There are only majors. So as you walk in the door on your freshman year, you have to know what your major is and you declare your major right away. You could change it later, but you have to know. For example, for me, that was very easy because I knew I wanted to teach and I thought I was going to teach English, so I became an English major and I stuck with it. Another difference is that the general education classes that you take in college are not taken in college in Spain. So if you're an English major, everything that you study is going to have to do with English. British history, English language, English grammar, English literature, all that. Because the idea is that the general education you do in high school. And so I would say that's another big difference. And then a final difference is the cost of college education. If you're going to a public university in Spain, like UT Martin, for example, or UT Knoxville, or any of the universities in the UT system, the tuition is very, very, very low. Why? Because the taxes in Europe are a lot higher than in the United States, and therefore a lot of that money goes into a nationalized health service, education, the improvement of roads, public transportation, which is a big difference also between Europe and the United States. We have very little public transportation in the US, depending, obviously if you go to New York, cities like that, yes, there's a lot. But if you think of Jackson, if you think of Martin, if you think of even Nashville, the public transportation is not, anything to write home about, right? But in Europe, it's very easy to just hop on a train and go to different places. They have high-speed trains, lots of buses. And so a lot of people like myself, don't get their driver's license until they are, in their 20s, because you don't really need it. I didn't need it. I didn't need to drive to go to the university. I hop on a bus, right? If you're in Madrid, you just use the subway. So yeah, those are differences between the U.S. and Europe, the U.S. and Spain that I find very interesting. People in Spanish cities are used to walking a lot more, a little bit like in New York, right? Whereas I feel like a lot of the cities in Tennessee, Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, the bigger cities are not built for walking necessarily. They're more, built for cars. And that's, if you ask me, that's one of the things that I miss the most. Not having to drive everywhere, being able to walk to a store, being able to walk to the theater, that kind of thing. But, like the Rolling Stones sang one time in one of their songs, you can't always get what you want. So, there are some pros and some cons about living in one place or another, and, you just make the best of it. I love living in Tennessee, and I'm very used to my life here in Tennessee. And when I go back to Europe, I often, I'm often not used anymore to that kind of way of life. I, get used to it while I'm there, but it's just not, the kind of thing I'm used to anymore. But one thing that's important that, before I let you go in the last couple of minutes that I have here, I would like to, impress upon you is that, learning a language like you are learning in high school, and if you keep learning language when you get to college, this is something that's going to help you, not just on a personal level, because you are going to be able to communicate with a lot more people. And that Spanish, for example, among all the languages that could be offered in high schools in the United States, is going to be definitely most useful that you're going to learn. Because there are a lot of people in our area who speak mostly Spanish. When I referee high school soccer, very often during the games I use as much Spanish as I use English, if not more, because a lot of the players are actually Spanish speakers, right? But this is going to help you a lot to be able to communicate with people. But depending on the kind of profession that you want to, devote your life to, it's going to help you also in a professional way. For example, if let's say you want to go into the, medical profession, Spanish is going to help you. You want to go into, you want to study law, for example, that's going to help you as well. Let's say that you're going to work in agriculture, for example, which is something that people do a lot in this area. Spanish is going to be very helpful. And another thing that's interesting is the best way to learn a language, really, besides taking Mrs. Allen's classes or the classes that you will have in college, is to actually, practice on your own. How can you do that? Well, there's many ways to do it these days. You could listen to music in Spanish. It's easy to find now on the internet. You can, it's easy to find publications online that are written in Spanish, or even podcasts that are in Spanish about different topics that you might be interested in. But one thing that really is very helpful is to actually get a chance to travel. If you get a chance to travel, if you get a chance to go to, Mexico, or anywhere in Central America and South America, Argentina, wherever it is, Spain, then that's when your ability to speak Spanish, your ability to communicate in Spanish is just going to skyrocket. That's what happened to me with English, My English way back when I began learning English, even when I went to South Dakota for the first time, I wasn't this fluent in English. But being in a place where only English was spoken, where I had to use it in order to be communicative, in order to get where I needed to be and do the things I needed to do daily, that makes a huge, huge difference. So if you ever get a chance, if you're in college, for example, and there's an opportunity to do a travel study in Spain, for example, or a study abroad opportunity in Mexico or in Honduras or in Chile or somewhere like that, take it, because that's where your ability to communicate is just going to become so much better. And don't worry so much when you learn it. I know this is hard to do. This was hard for me. It was hard for my wife. It's hard for everybody to learn some foreign language. But don't worry so much about the mistakes that you might make. Because the important thing, of course, in exams you have to get it right and you want to get a good grade, right? But when you're out in the real world, it's not an exam anymore. You have to be as communicative as you can. So I always tell my students, and I will tell you, if you ever go to a Mexican restaurant after you've taken some Spanish classes, you already are able, with the knowledge that you have from your high school, and I know it's a good high school, because I know all the high schools in the area through soccer refereeing, I know that you know enough Spanish in a Mexican restaurant to be able to order your food in Spanish. Try it out. See if you get what you ordered. See if you were able to communicate in another language, because that's, at the end of the day, the most important thing about learning another language is to be able to communicate with more people and with people who will not necessarily know English. So I appreciate your attention. Thank you for being here. Muchísimas gracias. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of your stay today, the rest of your visit at the university. And, hopefully one day I will be here, but not giving a talk, but, teaching Spanish to you, because I'm one of the 3 Spanish professors that right now we have at the university. Muchas gracias y hasta pronto. Gracias, Raquel.